So, ladies and gentlemen, we all thought that it was due for us to hop on here for a therapy session. Last night was a generational ass beating in the preseason where the Buffalo Bills ended up losing 38 to nothing to the Chicago Bears. No matter how you chalk it up, I am not going to be mad at somebody for being upset. But we want to make sure that you are upset at the right things and not upset with a particular narrative that's been going around the internet. But still, everybody is allowed to be in their feelings because last night was not a good showing from the Buffalo Bills. Second string, third string, fourth string, the whole nine. I am super excited to unpack with the boys on today's episode. I could imagine Kevin will be joining us momentarily. Jake, what's going on with you, man? Talk to me.
Yeah, you're right. That was a lot of belt tasks yesterday from the Chicago Bears. And it was a long night trying to watch that whole thing. You got to watch it all, though. There's a lot to take away from this, and there's a lot to break down. Mostly negatives. It's going to be hard to find the positives from that. But I think for me, right now, the biggest priority for the Buffalo Bills is to stay healthy because there's two teams with two different priorities here. You have a Chicago Bears team with Ben Johnson, new head coach, working with Caleb Williams, just his second season in the National Football League. And then you have the Buffalo Bills, who are a solidified Super Bowl contender with Josh Allen, the league's MVP at the quarterback position. So let's take it down a notch. Let's remember that just last season, the Chicago Bears put a beat down on the Bills in the preseason, and that didn't stop the Bills from having a magnificent season.
It's funny you say that because it does sound like a preseason tradition where we get an ass whooping from the Chicago Bears every single year. Ain't that right? Z-Bot, what's up, man? How you doing?
Well, fellas, episode 4 of the Buffalo Bills Roundtable, and I just want to say to you guys and to the folks watching, it's been a hell of a ride, and I appreciate it. We're going to be shutting it down because it's done. It's over after last night. I don't think we can continue on in good conscience after what we witnessed, and so we want to thank you for a hell of a run. I think we made it just near a month, and it was a hell of a ride. Look, am I reading into what last night was? No. But the fact that that was nationally televised, the fact that I sat and watched every minute of that, I'm questioning everything. But you guys nailed it, right? Get blown out by the Bears last year. We saw how the Bears season went. We saw how the Bills season went. I believe the Bills went 0-16 in the preseason during the 4-year Super Bowl run. It means next to nothing. The most disheartening thing I think about last night was, one, there seemed to be a lack of effort across the board. The amount of penalties, that's something that should not be witnessed out on the field, whether it's second, third string, first string. 10 penalties for nearly 100 yards, mental errors up and down. And what was probably just the most unfortunate was the guys you're looking forward to either having a depth role on this team or potentially vying for a starting role, just not showing up in the capacity in which you'd hope. And Jake, you mentioned it, the list of positives in this game are very short. I mean, we might spend 5 seconds on this, and I'm looking forward to getting to that section because there's a minimal amount to talk about, but at least we can find some silver lining in this. And Kev, God bless you. I'm glad you showed up, but I wouldn't have blamed you if you didn't, because that was a tough one to watch. I tried talking about it in a show afterwards, and I sat there and I'm like, I don't know how you guys feel about this, by the way. You're at a crossroads between all you have is just a list of stuff to complain about, but then it hits you, you're like, we're going to forget about this in like 48 hours. So I'm stuck at a rock and a hard place between having to complain about it, but also knowing, for the most part, what we witnessed last night is going to be forgotten about and put in the rear view. Luckily, because, fellas, we know across the league, there are fan bases that are going to have to watch football like that last night for 17 weeks starting in September. So thank God for the Bills. It's in August.
So one thing I always like to remind myself is that barring some unprecedented injury bug, it's very rare that we're ever going to see a full second string defense out playing in unison at any point during the regular season, barring us winning, of course, by like 2 or 3 scores well into the fourth quarter. Same thing with the third string. So that's a way to at least look at it from a positive light. Kevin, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing all right. I think just another day in paradise to, a very on fire timeline, but either or. Like, I put out some 16 players that I have making this roster have played in the preseason more than 15 snaps. Honestly, guys, like, if you're talking about 20% of the roster, you're talking about guys that might not even make the roster for the most part. 75% of the players playing for the snaps I don't have on the roster. So maybe some of them do go to the practice squad. Maybe they come up at some point this year and play special teams. It's just not a concern. The Bills went the Rams approach this year. McDermott won 10 straight preseason games back in 2021. So ultimately, they've determined that wasn't the path to success either. So I think this had to do with Josh Allen. If Josh Allen's not playing, then do you really get any time with the offensive line? And it just goes down from there. So I think ultimately injured players, rookies, and guys new on the team, Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore, etc. Other than that, you got a lot of guys not making this roster. Do I want my guy 50 to guy 90 to be better? I mean, I guess. Maybe there's going to be a waiver claim less or two than I thought. But that's about what I take away from this. Of Shavers is going to make the roster. There's a couple of fringe guys that I think make the roster. And ultimately, the Bills chose to go healthy. The healthy route, really only getting Hancock, and that was hopefully minor. Getting him injured a little bit and playing nickel. But outside of that, ultimately, Dan, I'm feeling okay. I just don't think it matters. Same game last year, Chicago. We played 2 games in a row. We talked about Dable last time, where he's coaching for New York. And then we talked about, we talked about this last week. Remember? We talked about Ben Johnson going out and acting like he's the best ever and needing to win. Don't forget the Bills did get Caleb Williams to throw 3 straight incompletions with their threes and punt the ball. So ultimately, I don't really care that much. There was some players that I didn't love the way they played, and hopefully they, weren't going to make the roster. But guys, 23% is what I had playing in the last 2 games combined with their snap counts. Dan, it's the C. It's the C team. It's not even the B team. It's the C team. So if they ever have to roll out their C team, I don't think we're winning any games. But the biggest thing that bothers me, and this is where I'll land, is, the Bills are all Josh Allen. Well, okay, he's the MVP. Like that's fair. But honestly, you can't not have Josh Allen and also not have $56 million a year in cap space. He's 20% of your cap. So in a world where you don't have Josh Allen, you also have 20% back in cap space. People are conflating the two and putting them together. Like, if you don't have 20% of cap space and you don't have Josh Allen, like, okay, like now we're just like making things up as we go to be negative or whatever you want to be. I'm overall not very concerned with this performance. The Bills are obviously led by their star and MVP quarterback. And with that comes, you don't have backup quarterbacks, and you do take some hit at safety and other positions because you just signed $470 million in guaranteed money that Terry Bagula has to put in escrow. So yes, you're going to have a little weakness at safety, and you're not going to have a good backup quarterback. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. And that's a very interesting way of looking at things, folks. You diagnose every single NFL roster, there is going to be one weakness on the damn team, right? Or otherwise, how would offensive coordinators plan to exploit a particular position group? So, surprisingly enough, I can guarantee you that Buffalo is not the only team that is going through this while looking at their roster in and of itself and finding a weakness. I promise you we are in a much better position than many teams in the NFL. Fun fact, we have a Patreon caller backstage. Folks, if, for example, that you would ever like to call into the show, you need to sign up for Roundtable Sports Patreon. We basically treat it like a radio show. We bring you in for about 20 to 30 seconds. You come in with a statement and or a question. We boot you out and we answer. Say, for example, that you're interested. That link is in the description. I just added it, so refresh the page if you haven't had an opportunity of doing it already. James Goldsmith, welcome to the Bills Roundtable, man. What's on your mind?
Thank you. What's on my mind is Jackson Hawes. I'm really rooting for this guy to be an NFL player and to be good. But I'd like your impressions. And also, when he got drafted, I read from some very reputable source that they thought that he could compete with Anderson to do that 6th offensive line position that Anderson did so well last year, and that might actually reap benefits if they can't sign, God forbid they can't sign McGovern, but if they can't sign McGovern or Edwards, that maybe Anderson could slip into Edwards' role and he could take over the 6th role. And I don't understand that because although I think that Jackson Hawes is a beast, he's too small, I would have thought. And that's my question. Thanks, guys.
James, we appreciate the call. And funny enough, and so I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to take a peep at the damn PFF scores, but he's talking about the Jackson Hawes, who was the most impressive offensive player out on the field. I'm not sure how much you're putting into this. But Kev, thoughts on this? A great question here from our buddy James. What's going on?
Yeah, he's been good, right? So I do ultimately think he has won the third tight end job. I was a big Zach Davidson guy. He is a smooth route runner. He really beats people down the field. He creates separation, things that you're looking for from a tight end. But he's had too many mistakes in preseason, and that's unfortunate. He's going to go to the practice squad, but Haas has won the tight end 3 job, and I think he has won the 6 offensive line job. Alec Anderson's hurt. He had that knee scope. I don't know if he's going to be ready week 1, but he has been sealing amazingly. He's been great in run. He had a couple of really great reps in the Giants game, in pass pro against a 299-pound defensive lineman. If he can do that, he's going to play. And the benefit there is he's not Alec Anderson. So maybe he's not quite an offensive lineman, but he's sure close. But the benefit that you'll have there is he can also create a little bit of separation and mismatch in the passing game, which he's shown in training camp. So I think he's been a great player. He's been a good draft choice. One of the day 3 players that the Bills have added that has been a generous for his landing spot, and what's said to be one of the best blocking tight ends in the draft. And we've seen it so far. The way that he sealed on a pass protection block with Mike White at quarterback against the Giants was something you can't teach. And it's something the Bills haven't had out of their third tight end in quite some time. Quentin Morris was not a good blocking tight end. I don't know where he got that reputation. He was a converted receiver at Bowling Green, and he was terrible. So I think this is a pure upgrade from that position. It's why the Bills didn't resign him. So huge fan of Jackson Haas and what he's been able to put on film. Has been one of the better offensive players in training camp, and especially with his limited 6 snaps that he had, because he's made the roster. Guys got 10 or less snaps are generally on the roster right now. McDermott has given you a little bit of a tell to how he planned to play this thing, and I took him right out of the game. Didn't want to risk getting him hurt, so that should tell you when all the rookies are playing deep. That should tell you what you need to know about how he thinks about Jackson Haas.
So we appreciate that call. We definitely appreciate that call. And so again, folks, feel free to sign up for Patreon. Only $10 per month. It goes a long way right over at the Roundtable Sports Network. I'm glad we started off with a positive, because I could imagine for the remainder of this episode, it's going to be a lot of negatives. All right. However, one sort of quasi-positive is that we figured out who QB2 was, and that was before he even ended up taking the field. Mike White, very rough first half. Let's go around the table and hear some comments on Mike White's performance. And it sounds like Buffalo is not going to be trying to save the money by walking away from Mitchell Trubisky. Jake, thoughts on that, Mike White's performance, and your take on the overall QB2 position battle?
Yeah, I mean, Mike White, it was an ugly night for him. He was like a statue in there. In the pocket, he was a statue. He doesn't have the mobility that a Mitch Trubisky does, and we know that the Buffalo Bills offensive unit, they thrive with a mobile quarterback like Josh Allen. Now, Mitch Trubisky and Josh Allen, 2 completely different quarterbacks. We're not comparing them, but what we're saying here is that Mitch Trubisky has more athleticism, more ability to escape the pocket, and he was under – Mike White, that is, was under constant duress all night last night. He was off with his throws. This pass right here to Tyrell Shavers, yeah. I mean, just not a good look for Mike White. And despite the money difference that could be made here, the Bills, in this situation, you got to go with the better player. Right now, that's looking like Mitch Trubisky for sure.
And so why don't you talk to me about that, Z-Bot, into the Mike White experience?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately for Mike White last night, I don't know how much of a chance he was given. He felt like he had no time to breathe, but when he did have a second to breathe, it did not look great. I think he was 4 of 11. He really could have saved his night last night if he were to have hit Tyrell Shavers on that ball along the right side of the sideline there. He had him, and if he hit him in stride, that could have been a touchdown. So you could have been thinking about Mike White's performance differently if he would have hit him in stride on that ball, but he didn't. He overthrew it. And, you know, this was certainly a close battle throughout the offseason here, one we had been keeping our eye on. But when you do factor in the money for Mitch Trubisky, you do factor in his play style compared to Josh Allen's. It always felt like it was leaning towards Mitch Trubisky, and Mike White would really have to over excel beyond what we've seen from Mitch Trubisky in order to earn that role. I just don't think that he's done that. I think there's been times where he's looked better, but I don't think in totality he's looked exceptionally better to the point where you're willing to just move off of Trubisky and go to Mike White. You know, last week against the Giants, Trubisky had the benefit of starting that game with more starters than Mike White had at his disposal. But last night, it just did not look great despite the offensive line effort, which was poor. You're looking at Mike White, though, you feel comfortable about having him in the 3rd spot. I mean, obviously the Bills are in a situation right now where at quarterback 2, Mitch Trubisky is someone you feel good about looking across the league in terms of having a backup quarterback and feeling somewhat fine about having a guy come in and play for a couple of games. I don't know if it gets a whole lot better than Mitch Trubisky, but Mike White being at QB3, I mean, this is a guy who's started in this league before for several teams the Bills have gone up against. We've faced Mike White multiple times. So you feel good still, even though he hasn't done enough to earn quarterback 2 up until this point. I think you feel fine that if the Bills do wind up getting in a situation where, God forbid, they have to go that route, it's better than maybe other teams have at their disposal at QB3. But yeah, last night, Mike White was just one of the litany of guys that did not play well. But unfortunately for him, getting a full first half to play with did not impress. And I just felt like he was going to have to over excel in order to earn that role. And unfortunately for him, I don't think he did that.
And so what you got on that, Kev?
It's tough to know how much stock they'll put into like the preseason performance. I mean, I just think I thought Trubisky had it locked up, but also came in and did the same thing. Like he looked like slightly better in the one drive out of half. And just like the first game where I thought they both looked reasonably decent, the difference was Trubisky looked awful in the first quarter, and that was a quarter they got behind if you really care about the game flow of it. I think we're counting in a Trubisky win because he fits a little bit more of Josh Allen's play style, but like there's still money to be saved there. Are they getting a fundamental difference of over $2 million between the two? The Bills need to decide that. It's not even Steven. That's the other thing to remember. Are they getting that fundamental benefit in the not only in the locker room and on the field if he has to play, but then also in the film room? Are they getting that difference? I don't see it. I think he played better than Mike White, but not much, and definitely not more money better. If it was $1 million each, whatever, Trubisky wins. But it's not. Like honestly, there's a $2 million difference. I thought Mike White was okay considering what he was given and the chores of. You had Palmer out there for a few. He's got guys coming in and out trying to do their own, like we talked about on the last couple episodes. They have their own individual plans in these games. Like each player has an individual plan. And Mike White's kind of just managing that. He didn't even get the reps with the first team offensive line like Mitchell Trubisky did in the first quarter and still struggled. So in face value, tick to Mitchell Trubisky in this one. I honestly thought they would just go to Shane Buechele right away. So for the second half, that's the way that who they were playing. They were literally playing 3s and 4s. So I thought that's would be the natural trend. But then putting Trubisky in was interesting. Like there was still a battle. If Trubisky didn't go in, I would say it's his job. They put him in. Like he could have gotten hurt with backup offensive linemen and guys trying to make a roster on the Bears. The Bears were playing it like the Super Bowl. So like they had, there was a lot on the line for who could be your QB2. So yeah, that's an important position-ish. So honestly, the Bills felt like it was enough of a battle to put him into that game. It's not as slam dunk as I think it is. Do the Bills care about the $2 million? They might, Dan. They may say we have a fine for Mitchell Trubisky to one of these teams. We save $2 million and we don't have to do some type of restructure of one of our offensive linemen or somebody to push money down the road. So it is at face value. If they're both making vet minimum, like Mike White is close to, it's Mitchell Trubisky, but there is still money to be saved. There could still be a trade. I can't just give it to him yet. Game 3 is going to tell a lot, and that's basically all it's going to tell maybe, but it's going to tell me a lot about what the Bills think. Playing in the second half, guys, say what you want. That should have been Shane Buechele. So the fact that he's playing with worse talent than Mike White had, I don't know. That's telling.
So that's an interesting point that Kevin brings up. But you know what? I'd probably say that Mike White was not particularly number 1 on our list of underperformers. But I think we are all thinking of one name specifically. So what I want to do is go around the table and talk about players that really disappointed you last evening. And one thing I just want to get out there is that like you would have thought, and yes, look, I am not looking too much into this, especially from a collective unit. But at times, especially for players that were trying to make a name for themselves and potentially even making this roster, I almost saw a lot of low effort out there. Right? It almost feels like they didn't even want to be out there in the first place, and a piss poor, like trying to make the team. But so I'll start off with my player that worries me. I'd probably say Joe Andreessen. My guy was getting absolutely destroyed in coverage. 5 targets, and he allowed 5 receptions for 89 yards. And granted, I'm not going to hold it against him. He was never really known as a coverage linebacker in the first place. But what concerns me is you also end up putting in Dorian Williams, and both of those guys are technically where it stands next man up, not unless you think Shaq Thompson is going to be one of the next men up there. But say that either Matt Milano plus Terrell Bernard are down at any given point together during the regular season, I have a feeling that's going to be something that would be exploited almost immediately. I'm kind of concerned with the depth that we have at the linebacker department, seeing that performance from Andreessen last evening. Thoughts on Joe Andreessen? And so I'll start off with Kevin on this one.
Wasn't a good night for him. I mean, he had the most to gain. I mean, he pretty much could have locked in the linebacker 3 job, like ahead of Dorian, and Dorian's still playing in there late. That tells you, I'm going to stay consistent with this throughout the show, is he's playing pretty deep into the game. Like, he's not guaranteed to be linebacker 3, 4, or 5 at this point. Shaq Thompson may be a guy that they've signed that they feel really good about this defense. We haven't seen too much of, but he has had good moments. He has good tape in the past. So, and definitely good tape for a 3rd or 4th linebacker. I mean, look, it's been a sour spot for us back to the great AJ Klein game of the playoffs. You need your starters to play, and behind that, you're always going to be a little bit in trouble. So it was not a great day for him. It was one of his worst as a Bill. He's had a lot of good days and a lot of good moments.
Yeah.
And like I said, they went out throwing. They went out throwing into the deep cover twos of where you're supposed to be. Yes, he could have trailed a little bit more. He doesn't have really good safety help. He had Codrington on the boundary. He didn't really have much of what it looked like with a starting unit and Christian Benford and Taron Johnson to help him in the middle, and much of their Taylor Rapp there to actually hold leverage. So wasn't a good day. He fell victim to who he had both behind him, next to him, and in front of him. Dorian Williams has never been good in coverage. It's always been a liability of his. So honestly, not a good day for Joe Andreessen. But I still think he's done enough to earn linebacker 3, basically going to be Terrell Bernard's backup, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens. Especially if he had a full defense in front of him. Once again, playing with 2s and 3s and 4s, it's not going to be common where he sees that many snaps with those kind of players. But Codrington was bad. Dane Jackson's bad. DeMar Hamlin had a rough day. Like, he just didn't have anyone around them to hold leverage at all. Even Cole Bishop and a few of his reps struggled a little bit. So guys, I mean, wasn't a good day for him at all. It wasn't really a good day for anyone that wasn't like Shavers. And, he had a couple of good rushes from Hoyt, and, at times the rookies looked okay. But other than that, like, it was not a good day for many people. And I think it trickled down to the rest of the team, including Joe Andreessen, who's literally running that defense that played pretty poorly. So wasn't a good job. Not known for coverage. Would need some help if he had to play, and hopefully he'll never have to play next to Dorian Williams, and hopefully one of those linebackers is always playing. It's been a weak spot for the team. We'll see what they do about it.
Let's stay as healthy as humanly possible. Z-Bot, thoughts on the Joe Andreessen experience last evening?
Yeah, it was unfortunate. He certainly made my list. I feel like it was pretty obvious right off the bat. I mean, you saw how open the middle of the field was, and the tight ends for the Chicago Bears were just having their way. I mean, you literally could have parked an 18-wheeler in the middle of the field on any given play. And, the thing with Joe Andreessen is when you're running the ball, he's got an uncanny knack for finding the ball carrier and getting after it. But when it comes to the pass game, that's where I think you see his struggles. And you saw that last night. I think Kevin said a lot of good things there. One in particular being you're out there with a cast of guys that aren't going to be able to defend the back end if you're not able to get it done in the middle, which we saw with Joe Andreessen last night wasn't a strong suit. So it wasn't like they were set up for the best outcome possible. But last night, I think there was just one too many times where it felt like he was over pursuing. And because of that, the middle of the field was wide open in the area in which you're expecting him to cover. I think up until this point, there's been far more positive than negative, especially when you're factoring in a guy that has had the story that he's had, right? Going from being completely unknown to getting to this point in his career. So I tend to look at the positives with him far more than the negative. But last night, in conjunction with, like we've said, just about everybody, he certainly was on that list. And it was disappointing. Those were the guys last night that I think, were upsetting the most. Guys like him, Hamlin, Bishop, because these are guys that you might be expecting to have an impact on this team this season. The other guys you can live with for the most part, because unless the Bills are in a really bad spot, you're not expecting to see them out on the field. But those are a couple of guys right there that you could see have substantial time, especially if the circumstances call for it. And that's where I was upset, not because of the final score, because the fourth stringers weren't able to stop the Chicago Bears freight train of an offense last night that was trying to put out a PR piece. But what we saw from Joe Andreessen last night early on was certainly probably the weakest of the performances we've seen from him up until this point.
So I think, of course, we are seeing some overreactions on the internet. We're seeing Joe Andreessen needs to be cut immediately. We have Joe Andreessen should start right over Terrell Bernard. That's crazy that those are right on top of each other.
The duality of man, right?
The duality of man. Jake, thoughts on Andreessen right before we end up hearing from somebody else's most with the concerning player?
Well, we had a quote earlier from Bobby Babich saying it's not Buffalo Joe anymore, it's Joe Andreessen. Well, with a performance like last night, you go back to Buffalo Joe because it just highlights what the story's been for Buffalo Joe. Joe Andreessen. Here's the thing. He's had a great story. He played well all preseason last year. And in the preseason opener this year against the New York Giants, what we saw was completely different from what we saw out there tonight. So let's take a step back. Let's reevaluate. He definitely needs to come out with a stronger performance next week because what we saw out there, he was just getting exposed and burnt. It was bad all night long. And it just, he did not look like he belonged out there on that field. He didn't look like he was into it. He looked out of it.
He did. Yeah. And so many players shared the exact same mentality, at least for what it looked like. Z-Bot, who was on top of your list for the most disappointing performance last evening?
Well, the collection of the safety effort last night has to be at the top of the list, but I'll start with Damar Hamlin because this is a guy that's supposed to be relied upon. He's been a starter for a couple of years now, and, this is somebody that in all likelihood is going to be your starting safety alongside Taylor Rapp come week one here when you're factoring in Cole Bishop's inability to get out on the field consistently with the injury history. Maybe with Derek Forrest, who knows? We haven't heard a whole lot of positive coming out of camp surrounding him. So you're more than likely going to default back to Damar Hamlin. And we've seen positives from Damar Hamlin, but these last couple of preseason games here, I feel like he stood out in both games in terms of somebody you looked at and said, man, this just doesn't seem like somebody that you are going to be confident in starting week one and beyond. I think the goal has always been for Cole Bishop to assume that role. But when you do have the injury in mind and the fact that he hasn't been able to get out on the field and then he only gets a dozen reps last night, they don't look all that great. I mean, he's a far way away, it feels like, from being able to be a reliable starting safety that they drafted him to be in the second round 2 drafts ago. So that, to me, probably the one guy that stands out. It was just a collection of bad play from the safety unit. But that's the guy that in all likelihood is going to be the starter, and you're expecting a bit more. And I just don't think we've seen it the last couple of weeks. So I think that the concern surrounding safety number 2 right now is certainly a fair one. I know a lot of people look at last night, and rightfully so. It is a preseason game, and they do mean next to nothing. But last night you're looking at that position in particular as one that is yet to lock in who the starting player will be alongside Taylor Rapp. And as we gear closer to the season, realizing more than likely it will be Hamlin, you're hoping to see a bit more. And I just think the last 2 preseason games here, we haven't seen it.
Oh my God, man. And so with same thing with Cole Bishop, he really didn't impress very much last night either, especially with his limited snaps. Kevin, thoughts on the state of the safety room here?
The safety room, it's tough because we've already stated on here how important Rapp is. Look, he doesn't have the accolades of a Micah Hyde or, put whatever safety, you like here. But he's that good. He is that good to the defense. He knows it. He is an important piece to McDermott's defense, and missing your starting safety and getting Cole Bishop some reps where he doesn't get hurt is the main goal here. Does he really care if Zacchaeus runs for a touchdown? Not really. We got to remember that. He is in the rep. He is seeing the defense, and that's what he's out to do. He's in a different boat when he's playing in these games. So we still yet to be seen on Rapp and Bishop on what could happen at the safety position. So I'm not overly still concerned, but there's still guys like Simmons out there that you go out and get and be an immediate contributor. I don't think Damar Hamlin's going to make the roster. He does have a $2 million guarantee of his contract, so would cost the Bills a little bit of money. But ultimately, I do think that they can move on from him, and they really are training Hancock to have a big role in this defense. Like, look, they went to Benford early on in his career, and Hancock may be in that mold of getting some time right away. I do believe he's very close to earning a starting job if it continues to look like this. So we'll see what Bishop comes out and does. You can't be missing safety one. He's a huge part of it. And it's just like who gets to play next to him will receive a benefit, just like DeMar Hamlin got a benefit of playing with better players on defense when he's in too, when he's not the focal point of needing to make a play on Dane Jackson in Jackson Dart's throw, or when he needs to make a tackle with Cole Bishop in coverage. Ultimately, I need more from DeMar Hamlin if he's going to be safety 3. It just doesn't look good enough for him. But my biggest disappointment from this game was QB2. Like, I thought I'd have a solid QB2. I don't think either of them look particularly good. I don't think the Bills will win many games if either of them needs to play. That's not really saying much, but so my default is save the money and be able to make some moves and not have to push money down the road. I don't really think there's a fundamental difference between these quarterbacks, and I think you can maybe get a little bit of something out of Trubisky in the trade market plus saving some money. But that's my biggest. I needed to see him do something in this game, guys. Like it's important to him. That's the time he'll play. This doesn't hold true for the rest of the things I've said tonight. This guy the preseason is important, like it is for Stetson Bennett or like it is for other quarterbacks that are trying to, a little bit different. But this is Mike White's time to shine. This is Mitchell Trubisky's time to be like, look, I'm one of the better QB2s in the league. And they were going through the motions. Like, honestly, like I thought they had decent protection at times. Like I thought there was moments, missing throws. Like I just ultimately don't know. I thought the drive by Trubisky was a little bit weird because they called Zach Davidson on an OPI. That just was an awful call. He held his block from the line of scrimmage, which is legal. I'm not really sure what they saw there to limit what could have been a scoring drive. And then obviously the Frank Gore Jr. fumble could have at least so the score starts to add up here after a few really weird plays. So honestly, Frank Gore Jr. didn't help his cause. I thought that he was okay, like running against backups. Can't fumble there in the goal line or in the red zone, excuse me. With Brandon Beane watching, like Darrington Evans is a sneaky player to make the practice squad still. So honestly, I need to see more from the generals of the people that should care. Like no one else should really care that much, especially starters. Like, we only had a few that played, but the QB2's got to care, Dan. And ultimately, that's how I take away. And the Bears cared. They were game planning. They ran a drag route into the deep shell of cover 2 quarters on us. They both studied our defense and they ran a drag in the end zone behind, where Dane Jackson was in trail coverage, like right behind Jordan Hancock. That was a game. That was game planned. Like I don't care what you
was
say.
about to ask about that.
Was not called. That was game planned. Yeah.
So I thought so because like someone blew their assignment like right on that rep. I thought it was Hancock. Maybe that was just like a rookie mistake, but I was literally
it was a zone beat or drag call that he knew the Bills were going to go into a certain coverage there, and he game planned for it, seeing that the looks. Bills are just like whatever, but they knew exactly what the call was going to be defensively, and Ben Johnson called a drag across the field to go into this weak zone where he thought maybe Jordan Hancock would or wouldn't be there. Come on, like it's fine. You can do whatever you want again, but let's see this in the regular season.
So the Buffalo Bills literally have played 2 teams where the head coaches have something to prove to their own market. And funny enough, so we get the 2 biggest markets right in the United States, Ben Johnson trying to make a name for himself and Dable just trying to make sure that he doesn't get fired. All right, so look at that.
And maybe the GM proved it.
Tampa Bay does.
That was the last thing. The GM proved it. He goes on there and like, Ben takes everything seriously, and this is how he is, and like he game planned for that game. He wanted to win. He wanted to put it out on national TV that his team's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the NFC North. Like we know what happened there, guys. Come on, let's see what happened. That game's completely different with starters from the Bills playing, and 23% of the roster was in the game. So,
all right. So what was one of the players that you were upset with, Jake? Talk to us. Who disappointed you?
Honestly, there's a lot of ways you can go with this. And to start this entire thing off, I'd like to say the biggest disappointment for me last night, like I understand the fact that this is a preseason game and this is a team with Super Bowl aspirations, but the biggest disappointment for me overall was the lack of discipline on this team. Missed tackles, and then when you look at the penalties, 10 penalties for 96 yards, that's just not representative of what a Sean McDermott-led Buffalo Bills team is. You had back-to-back plays on the offensive line, pre-snap penalties, and that goes to Ryan Vandermark. So that really stands out for me as someone who's a real offensive line candidate. You got to understand the importance of inside the trenches. That's how games are won. You can drain the clock. You can protect your quarterback. 20 minutes time of possession compared to 39 for the Chicago Bears yesterday. So really, they were controlling the trenches and they were dominating the game, holding on to that football, playing ball control ball. So, I mean, not a good look for the Buffalo Bills at all. And the offensive line there, Ryan Vandermark, that really frustrated me.
Oh, yeah. And so those two false start penalties back to back from Vandermark, well,
not a good look.
So I'll tell you what, man, he did step up for us a little bit last year, but that, of course, was inexcusable.
That's the thing. That's the thing. This is someone who's been here before. So you're looking for a little more leadership in that situation.
A little bit right there. Folks, I have to give a giant shout out to today's proud partner, Picasso's Pizza. This is Buffalo Pizza, folks. Say, for example, you were ever in the area or you currently live there. You have to make sure you go check these guys out. If you are not in the Western New York area, have no fear. They are delivering nationwide. Simply just go to picassospizza.net and hit that yellow nationwide shipping button, and they will mail pizza to your front doorstep, folks. You do not want to miss out on this. It works great for gifts as well. Say, for example, you have parents or maybe a son or a daughter that has moved away from home and misses the taste of home, if you will. You can go on ahead and mail some za nationwide. Shout out to Picasso's Pizza. Is anybody else as concerned as I am with the lack of production from the defensive line as well? Like, maybe it's because there's really not a lot of sexy stats. Like we have one sack, and that's from Michael Hoyt. He probably shouldn't have been running with the threes in the first place, but obviously he's suspended for 6 games. So am I being too picky, or so would you say that I'm on to something? And so I'll talk to Z-Bot on this one first.
It hasn't been what you're looking for, I think, especially with the amount of additions made up there. You're hoping for a bit more. You're hoping to have it seem like it's jumping off the page a bit more than it has up until this point, right? I think we can't really make a fair judgment yet. I liked what I saw from Joey Bosa in the first preseason game in limited snaps, just like the way he was getting off the ball. I did like, in general, what I saw from the D-line against the Giants when the starters were in there. I thought that they were getting decent pressure and manipulating the pocket a little bit. They just didn't have a whole lot of opportunity to do so. And I'm also just kind of factoring in that I'm not entirely sure if the guys known to be starters are going 110% in those moments. But, like last night, you're definitely hoping to see more. I think one of the reasons why the secondary was getting eviscerated the way it was because they just weren't able to form any real pressure on the quarterback, regardless of who was playing. I mean, I thought Bagent was the best player on the field last night, not Caleb Williams. And that was a lot to do with the fact that he just had a lot of time. He was able to move around. They weren't able to get after him. And that, of course, led to a really difficult situation for the back end to be in. And that's why there were so many open guys throughout the course of the game. They just weren't really able to generate much pressure. But with the amount of guys that I'm looking forward to watching this upcoming season in that positional group, I'm not entirely concerned right now. I think we have seen some good. We've heard a lot of good. Joey Bosa, 2 sacks in Friday's joint practice. I mean, I'm more excited than not about what we could potentially see from this D-line going into the regular season. I think we've seen some flashes from Deion Walker and from TJ Sanders. I'm still waiting to hear Landon Jackson's name in any capacity. That might be the one right now where you're like, man, You're hearing from Deion Walker, you're hearing from TJ Sanders, even though it's not some mind-blowing play. I think you're hearing them be brought up because they're involved in a play or two. You're not hearing that from Landon Jackson. So that's the one where I'm like, I would definitely like to see or hear a little bit more. But I'm not overly concerned right now, Dan, just because I think that there's a lot of room for improvement that they've narrowed in on this offseason. I got to wait and see that starting unit out there before I can make judgment on whether or not it's a concern. Last night obviously wasn't great, but I didn't mind what I saw early on in that Giants game last week. So time will tell there, but still very excited about the potential of that D-line.
So it sounds like Landon Jackson had 4 hurries last night and 1 hit, followed by TJ Sanders with 3. And then we had Deion Walker with 2. So we're talking about defensive line. Kev, thoughts on that? I have yet to look at the all-22 from the trenches side of things.
I mean, once again, we have to go back to snap count to see what our concern level actually is. And if you're thinking about it from a high perspective, I thought Landon Jackson had a couple of good reps. He didn't have a ton of support around him. Coverage was so bad, they kind of go hand in hand at times. But You have Michael Hoyt with 59 snaps and Landon Jackson with 60. So those are the two guys that have been playing the preseason. Like literally, those are your two edge rushers in this preseason. Zion Logue leads by far with 56 snaps from the interior. So like that's who you're getting. And then you have guys like also at the top of the list is Paris Shand. 52 snaps. He's basically playing starters minutes, preseason starters minutes, and Dwayne Carter with 50. So, I mean, you're talking about Shand, Dwayne Carter. You're talking about Casey Rogers is rotating in 42 snaps for Casey Rogers. Justin Hollins and Nelson Caesar on the outside. I mean, you don't even have. I don't know how beside Landon Jackson any of those guys that make the roster. So those are all practice squad guys getting practice squad minutes. So he needs to be a little bit better, but I thought he had some good moments. He had a good shot. He had a nice cross chop to create pressure. Didn't have any interior pressure on that play. And I believe Shand was in the game. I don't know why Shand is getting so many minutes. I don't know if they're looking for something specifically from him. But I'm not overly concerned because we haven't seen him. Z-Bot said it. It was good when the first team was in last week. Joey Bosa has been really good. Actually, Joey Bosa has been better than I thought at this stage. So, Greg Rousseau, I don't know if he's played any snaps, maybe a few. So ultimately couldn't be less concerned at the moment. I'm just glad the rookies are getting their feet wet and getting used to it because they're going to be next to Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones, and they're not going to all be playing together. One of them at a time may be in the game with three good to great veterans. So depending on how the mixture looks. So Landon Jackson's going to have the benefit of being able to play with Greg Rousseau or Joey Bosa and Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones or some mixture. He's not going to have to play with Paris Shand and others where, Landon Jackson may have been the best athlete on the field at point for the Bills defense. So I'm not concerned, Dan. I got to see guys that make the roster. I don't need all the studs, but I need to see guys that make the roster to make a determination on that. I mean, Javon Solomon hasn't been great. That's a big takeaway I have. His numbers haven't been good. I need to see more. He's been showed out on special teams, so he should still make the roster, but he has been good. So that's the big one for me that I needed that this was his time to shine, to kind of mix in with Hoyt. And really, it's just been Hoyt that's been able to show what he can do. And I thought Landon Jackson had a much better day yesterday than he did in the week one, which was a mess. So that's my takeaway from what we're looking at. And Sanders has put out some good reps. TJ Sanders has put out some good reps. So put him next to Ed Oliver, put him next to Joey Bosa, put him in with Greg Rousseau and Joey Bosa, and not having to have to worry about run as much. It's all going to come together, guys. You got, once again, I'm going to keep saying 23% of players that make the roster have played in preseason with double digits.
I love to hear that. So now we're talking about the roster. Last week, so we were all trying to find a way for Terrell Shavers to make this squad. And again, what does he do with his opportunities? He was one of the few bright spots out on the field. Now, based off of our conversations last week, we were saying, you know what? Probably going to be pretty hard because Chenault is clearly the best kick returner that we have. You have Curtis Samuel under contract. Probably can't release Samuel. Maybe you can find a trade partner. And I don't think that I'm alone here where I think that Elijah Moore's performance last night was not ideal either. So I'm going to go on ahead and turn it to the table. Does Shavers make this roster? And if he does, who is the odd man out? I am going to go to Jake. Does Shavers make this roster? And if so, who is the guy that is released, traded, or moved away from?
It's a tough question because Tyrell Shavers, obviously, this is someone that the Bills invested draft capital in, so they don't just want to let him walk here. So my feeling is that right now he's trending upwards. He was one of the very few receivers that made any impact on the Bills offense yesterday. So I don't know how much you want to put into that, but what he's been doing here in the preseason, it's solid. We remember that big play that he had against the New York Jets, a 69-yard touchdown at home back in December. So he's made some plays in the regular season, in the preseason. He's doing what he can to stand out with his limited opportunities. And right now, if you're looking at that Bills wide receiver room, I know that Kevin's big on getting rid of Curtis Samuel. I'm not sure if they'll be able to find the correct trade partner to make that work or what they want to do with that moving forward. But right now, Tyrell Shavers is definitely trending upwards, and he's looking to crack a spot on this roster. I think he will.
Interesting. Z-Bot, does Shavers make this team? Who is the odd man out if he does?
I got him making the team. I feel like he's earned it. I just feel like from what we've seen from him, he has taken advantage, maybe more so than anybody else on the offensive side of the ball with his opportunities. I mean, last night it should have been even an even better night than it was. I loved that back shoulder catch that he had. And then, of course, he was wide open on a beautiful route down the right side, and Josh Allen's going to hit that pass, and that's going to be a touchdown of 17s in the game. I think what we're seeing from him in terms of the evolution, he's really looking like a fluid route runner. He looks like a legitimate wide receiver when you're out there watching him. The ability to get separation, the ability to go up and get the ball. I've liked what I've seen. Now, in terms of the odd man out, I mean, that, of course, is the big question here. Elijah Moore, 2 drops last night. We have just yet to see Curtis Samuel in any capacity. I don't know. I mean, it's really all going to come down to what they decide to do in terms of keeping 5 or 6, right? But inevitably, somebody's going to have to probably be on the outside looking in order for him to get considerable snaps or at least be promoted into a positional role at the wide receiver spot. I don't know right now who the odd man out is. I would say Curtis Samuel just based on the inability to get him out on the field, not seeing him, but with that $7 million tied to him, I know Kevin wants to move off, and I think the Bills would probably not turn it down if they were able to find a trade partner. I don't think that they're going to for that amount of money, and for that reason, I feel like they end up keeping him. I once again, with Elijah Moore, I don't know what to make of it. I mean, the screen game is where you were probably hoping he'd be most impactful because of the speed, and last night you see a drop on the screen pass there. You see another drop in the middle of the field. The wide receiver spot right now, we've heard nothing but great things for the most part about Keon Coleman. And of course, we've seen a lot of good from Joshua Palmer up until this point. It is that spot where we're talking about Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, Tyrell Shavers. It really does feel like it's up for grabs. As of right now, I think Shavers has shown the most. Whether or not that means enough to get him a spot is one thing. But as of right now, I think in terms of a fringe guy, no one has really earned a spot more throughout this offseason here that might not have had a spot prior than Tyrell Shavers, and I'm rooting for him. I think we've seen a lot of good. He might have been the best offensive weapon on the field a week ago. I think he certainly was last night. You know, if not for Frank Gore's fumble there, maybe he would have taken the crown. But I think Shavers was easily the best available option for the majority of that game last night. And I'd like to see him play with Allen a bit more. Like I said, if Allen's in there and hitting him on that pass as opposed to Mike White, that's a touchdown. I think we're talking extremely highly of Shavers today. Not that we aren't, because I think he was the lone bright spot or one of maybe 2 or 3. Obviously, he's getting some good pub today as a result. But I think he does end up coming close to making it, if not making it. But the question you asked, Dan, is the question. Who is the odd man out? And that'll be interesting. I couldn't answer confidently right now because I just don't know. I don't think they want to move off of Elijah Moore, having just added him, knowing hasn't played with great talent and also super young still, despite seeming like an older veteran. But, man, I just think it's going to be tough to keep Shavers off this roster the way he's performed.
Oh, man. So I got to tell you what, I think whether or not that it's Elijah Moore and or Curtis Samuel, it likely has to be a trade, not unless you think. I've pulled it up right now, and so in case anyone's interested, right now we are 32nd in the league for available spend with the brand new James Cook contract. $1.5 million estimated by Spot Track where it stands, and we are all too familiar with what it would look like if we wanted to release and or trade Curtis Samuel, but here is what it would look like if we wanted to release/trade Elijah Moore. We'd have 0 cap savings, so it would be a wash, but a $2.5 million dead cap hit. And then a trade, we would be able to add about $1.7 million in our overall cap spend. But again, same question that has been brought up for Curtis Samuel. Would a team be interested in taking on Elijah Moore if that's what the team would like to do? Kevin, did Shavers do enough for you last night for you to become a believer that Buffalo is serious about potentially adding him to this roster?
Yes, like ultimately, Shavers, he had a little bit of buzz last year, and I was like, I don't have him. Like, I don't think he did much enough. He's a practice squad guy through and through. He's shown enough to be one of the better players offensively in a mishmash of dudes. He was one of the guys I referenced, the 16 players that have played double-digit snaps in the preseason and will make the roster. If he doesn't, if that 16 goes to 15. So ultimately, I do have him on the roster. The Bills are creative. Someone just traded for John Mechie, and Elijah Moore he's better, and his contract's not even like Curtis Samuel. So ultimately, Elijah Moore should have been, I guess, by one of us as a thumbs down guy because he was awful. Like, look, this is his time to be better. And I was told about how good he was in OTAs, but is he just going to be Chase Claypool 2.0 OTA guy? Chase Claypool had an injury excuse. I don't know what's going on with Elijah Moore, but he's not been good at all. He hasn't been good in practices. He hasn't been good in training camp, and now it's transferring into the game. I don't have him on the roster. The Bills got to do something with Elijah Moore, and he's complicating my Curtis Samuel situation. Just the rapport is not there unless Josh Allen's saying something behind the scenes like, no, Elijah's been good at XYZ. We need to roster him. But he's looking like Deontay Hardy. He's looking like Chase Claypool. He's looking like possibly they didn't invest much into him. It's not like a huge contract or a huge deal or anything. But I just, there's no world where you roster him and Curtis. I'm sorry. You do not roster him and Curtis Samuel. You have to move off of one of them. And it's up to the Bills to determine, does one have more value? Can you save more money with Curtis and just take a little bit, take no compensation back? These teams that have a lot of cap space, the Raiders, the 49ers have been looking for a receiver. I just do not believe that there's enough teams out there that will take one of these guys, in my opinion. So we'll see if that comes to fruition, or they just roster all of them and just say whatever, and we'll cut Shavers. Does Shavers have enough film out there to get claimed? He might. It's not common of a receiver that I'm really that worried because everybody has their receivers, but he may have enough film out there to get claimed at this stage. So the Bills have to make that determination, and maybe they will move off of one of these receivers based on who wins the return job too. That's going to really play a role into the final decisions.
Yeah. Well, folks, I will tell you what, that is going to have to do it for another episode of the Bills Roundtable, live Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. EST. If you haven't already, and the vast majority of you I know have been watching the replay of this, but shout out to everybody that tuned in live. Say that you're watching the replay of this. Make sure you turn on bell notifications when you subscribe to the channel. That way you know when we are live Mondays and Thursdays. Jake, what do you have to say to the audience before we set them free?
Obviously, a blowout loss isn't ideal, but it's the preseason. It happens. It happened to the Bills just last year. It's the same thing I started by saying to you, and I'm going to say it again. Don't stop believing. Let's move forward. The Buffalo Bills take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this weekend in the final preseason game. So we can wrap it up and then move forward. Let's do that. Let's do it.
That's a quality take right there, man. I love it. Z-Bot, what about you?
20 days. 20 days till the regular season kicks off for the Buffalo Bills. So as much as we like to complain about what we just saw last night, we're 20 days away from completely forgetting that ever happened. So I cannot wait. Appreciate everybody who's been tuning in. We cannot wait to spend the season with you.
What do you got, Kev?
So if the Bills happen to use their threes, which against Tampa, and they end up winning by 10 or 20 or 30, like I want to hear the reverse reactions because apparently it matters. Like Greg Olsen would not get off the fact that the score doesn't count, but they matter. Like it was the weirdest take ever. It was almost listening to a Bears broadcast. Ultimately, it was super strange. If they go and beat the Buccaneers with Mike White, I want to hear some pros next week. I want to hear those thumbs ups. But ultimately, guys, the ups don't matter just as much as the downs don't. So looking forward to 20 days from now. That's probably the biggest number, that the 20 days and the 23% of players that I have playing double-digit snaps in the preseason.
So if all of these preseason takes were accurate, then the Buffalo Bills and Kansas City Chiefs are fighting for the first overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft.
Trick us a QB.
Exactly. That's precisely what it is. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the Bills Roundtable, and we will see you next time.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.